Hi BookTube and welcome to a new video. This is my Friday reads for the end of July. 3 books completed this week. Literature, registered trademark little symbol there, by Guillermo Stitch. Lucy Ellmann's essays, Things Are Against Us. And some poetry, Life Without Air by Lafarge. So I'm going to start with Literature Registration Mark by Guillermo Stitch. So the first thing to say about this is I saw this being discussed on Twitter by, I think, involving Guillermo Stitch and some other people, and it sounded interesting. So I bought it. The second thing to say is I don't know how to peg Guillermo Stitch because on my reading spreadsheet I have country of origin of the author. And this book is written in English. Also, it seems to be self-published, which I have no issue with at all. It's through CreateSpace. So it's not translated. But Guillermo Stitch doesn't have a wiki entry. So I know nothing about him other than he lives in Spain. But he's not. He could be Spanish, but he's written this in English. So this is really going to stymie my spreadsheet. The totals of number of fiction authors read is not going to equal the total number of origin because I don't know where to place this guy. But that, I'm not holding that against it. It's a very slim volume. It's 85 pages long, and it starts off with sort of high concept, moves into some rather bog standard sort of genre chase thriller elements, and then sort of finishes up on a sort of metaphysical plane. And all of those three can coexist, but not successfully within 85 pages, I would offer. The most interesting stuff is the high concept at the beginning. So it's a future dystopia city, and a man called Stringer, who is exactly that, a stringer on a newspaper, in that he's normally the sports journalist, but has been assigned, in the absence of one of his colleagues, to go on this tour of a new commercial enterprise that's about to be unleashed. And irritatingly, he asks lots of questions, which sort of marks him out as a potential troublemaker, because the opposition in this dystopia is called Gilgamesh. And the people of Gilgamesh, or the people within the movement of Gilgamesh, smuggle books to each other to read. Because literature has a very different place within this society. Again, that's why it's called literature registered trademark. Because with this sort of oncoming fuel crisis, they've invented a new source of energy, which is cognition energy. They harness the energy generated by human thought. And this society has found that the best harvester and producer of this cog energy is fiction. And this is the tour that he's on there's about to be a new communications network, roads and trains, where the tracks and the road surface is made of freshly generated fiction. Literally, the texts are laid as the tracks or as the road, and the vehicles that pass along them sort of consume the words, and that drives the cars or drives the trains or whatever. And that's what this tour is about. He's being shown this technology. So I'm just going to read what I think is quite a nice take, and why I say this is quite high concept. My area is literature. I bring the cognition stuff up because it's relevant to the literature in the way we're still learning about. We've known for a long time that the highest quality input is fiction, story if you like. Mathematics, puzzles, history, science, none of them hold a candle to when it comes to the cog drives. And I think all of us readers can get behind that concept. But the problem for the Gilgamesh lot is, of course, this is a bastardization of fiction. This is fiction as industrial output rather than as art, because these manufacturers of the cog drive are saying that the worst fiction is all the classical canon, all the old stuff. That doesn't feed their fuel at all. They want smooth, really sort of uninvolving fiction that produces the best. So that, I liked all of that. I thought that was really inventive and stuff. And then basically Stringer is sort of followed around by people because they think he might be a member of Gilgamesh trying to infiltrate their sort of industrial espionage and bring it down, which is all sort of not very engaging, really. As I say, very bog standard. And then I'm not going to spoil the metaphysical ending. But it sort of returns to the notion of language and text and things like that. So all in all, I thought it was interesting. I'd give it 3.5 stars. And on to the poetry of Daisy Lafarge, who is British and multi-talented because she has had displays of her art, and her first novel is about to be published. And Life Without Air starts off with an epigraph from Pasteur, who conducted experiments of denying air to animals and stuff, and they obviously died, they were asphyxiated. But he also discovered there were certain things where they flourished in anaerobic atmospheres, such as bacteria. And this is a book very much about sort of suffocation, toxicity of air versus the fact that we need air to breathe, and yet it's, we're poisoning our air and stuff. And it's looking at relationships and stuff. And I think it's very effective, and I think the language is very good. So I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. So this is from a poem called Fossil Dinner, where it had a bit of the Ben Marcus about it, actually, which made me like this even more, where a wife is preparing a meal for her husband, who's a cartographer, and two of his academic friends. And the tablecloth is a map, sort of in keeping with her husband being a cartographer. As usual, Eric the paleontologist takes advantage of the table's subterranea and puts his hand on my knee, talking loudly of his proclivity for layers, while I sit still as a fossil, i.e. vibrating furiously. Furtschegot the theologian is more composed. He holds forth about ecclesia and the hot bun of Christ. Tonight there's a papery crust around his mouth like yeast. My husband contends. He passes his hand over a nearby tundra and asks, is creation not a vesture? Does the world not accentuate God the way a dress hints at a woman's divine curvature? So, I really like that. And then this is about parasitism, which she's trying to apply to evaluate a relationship. I'd been writing about parasites. In the section of my ecology textbook titled Symbiotic Relationships, there were demarcated subheadings: mutualism, commensalism, parasitism. I had to keep reminding myself that parasitism was a type of symbiotic relationship, not its opposite. That symbiosis wasn't a synonym for ecological harmony. I wondered if the people who kept using the S word in exhibition blurbs and event descriptions knew what kind of relationships they were endorsing. And then she talks about anglerfish, and then returns to this sort of categorization of parasitism. She'd been looking about for an explanation, a phylogenetic tree that could neatly classify her feelings and thoughts, fears and desires. It would be a system with an index and a glossary, a list of illustrations. That way she could easily verify what kind of relationship she was in, rather than this aimless swimming through textbooks, failing to locate a phylum to anchor to her mood. Someone had suggested to her that lack was an edgeless edge, constantly remade by motive forces of desire. She thought about the incompatibility of two sponges, each one trying to soak the other one up. Then she tried to think of the word for a relationship where neither organism benefits. Perhaps this was so ubiquitous that it didn't need a term. She thought about the white space between the lines in her textbook, how much still lurked there, waiting to be boxed into terminology. So obviously that's sort of quite prose poemy. There are sort of much more sort of standard verse poems in here as well. I say standard, I don't mean the language is standard, but the sort of the structure and the layout and stuff. So I really like this collection, and I gave it 4 stars. I'd be interested to check out her novel. I'm not sure if it's actually out yet. It's called Paul, P-A-U-L, which is a rather disappointing name. And on to Lucy Ellmann, Things Are Against Us, a book of essays by the writer of Ducks Newbury Port. And the first thing to say is I agree the heck out of about 95% of what she's arguing here, which is that ever since the destruction of matriarchal societies, a man has been in charge for 2,000 to 3,000 years. And where has that led us to today in a screwed up planet, Trump, patriarchy, the fact that women are degraded, that you would need a Me Too movement, all these sorts of things. And I agree, as I say, I agree the heck out of it. The problem is it's really badly put across and actually does damage, I believe, to our cause and trying to argue these things. And again, in talking about this, I'm going to talk about my own sort of take and approach and stuff on this. So the first thing to say is that it's sort of played for laughs in places. And she does that through wordplay, which is fine. But it's it rather undermines the tone of the seriousness of what you're trying to argue. But even more than that, it's that she uses wordplay and literariness, by which I don't mean her literary references, though there are literary references, but they're not overpowering. In place of stats, you need to back your argument up with stats. There are so few stats in here. That's a problem, I think. So she's talking about sort of Trump supporters. And this is one of the examples of kind of this sort of throw it all against the wall, see what sticks, sort of humour and wordplay. Americans are acutely unaware of the past and the future, also the present. History is infinitely malleable for them. So that's fine, but these are just bold, bald statements and nothing behind them. So is reality. Are they just undereducated, indoctrinated, chronically indifferent, hypnotised, or too damn busy making a buck? Consumed by consumerism, they wallow in army fatigues and self-regard, coveting the next dynamite Apple doodad or an AK-47 plasma screen and some Nikes. They have worried everybody and ruined the earth, all so that they can prance around, affect insouciance, drink beer, watch football, guzzle sloppy joes and Oreos, wear pro-Auschwitz sweatshirts, make pipe bombs, absorb incessant rock music, object to positive discrimination and the public display of the female nipple, wonder whether the mailman has shut the mailbox properly, and choose a new euphemism for excretion yearly. So those last two are sort of throwaway gags, I think. You've got all these sort of quite high-powered, pipe bombs, wear pro-Auschwitz sweatshirts in the same sentence as grumble whether the mailman has shut the mailbox properly. It doesn't work. It undermines the force of your own argument. There's an essay here called Three Strikes, where she wants women to enact three withdrawal of their contribution to the world in order to sort of affect change, that power is handed over to women, which is a nice idea, but it's pure fantasy. So the three things are to withdraw their domestic labour as mothers and wives, to withdraw their actual labour where they're in the workplace because of the glass ceiling and the fact that they're, the sort of pay discrepancies between men and women. And the third is withhold sex, have a sex strike, very much referencing the Lysistrata, an ancient Greek sort of comedy where the women do withhold sex in order to stop a war. It's very fanciful. Again, it's a bit played for laughs. And even as she admits herself, withdrawing your sexual favours isn't going to affect gay men, and lesbians are still allowed to have sex. They don't have to withdraw their sex from one another. It's an emotional call to action rather than a practical call to action. Therefore, what's the point? She's saying nothing new here, either in terms of a lot of these arguments you've read before, but you've also read them before in Lucy Ellmann. So, for example, in the appendix, she reproduces, I assume, because I haven't read her novel, Mimi, but in there was a form which men were supposed to sign to hand over all their worldly goods to women because we need to transfer power to women, and that includes economic power. And it's reproduced here. So she's actually plagiarising her own work, or it looks like, as I say, I haven't read Mimi, but she talks about how that's in that book, and it seems to be in the appendix here. So, I'm not sure that's too great. And a lot of the stuff she's obsessing about in here is in Ducks Newbury Port. And this is the point. The first thing to say about this is that it sent me back to picking up Ducks Newbury Port, which is one of my unfinished mammoths. And I started on page 300, which is what I'd reached this Monday. But now Friday, I'm on page 530. I'm so enjoying this. And everything in here is in here, but so much better here, because you don't need the facts here. You don't need to back it up with data, because this is fiction. And this is my point. This is not rigorous enough to be non-fiction. And it's sort of, as I say, wordplay, literariness, sort of having fun to some extent, even through your anger and rage. But it's done so much better and much more entertaining in here that this book, to me, becomes utterly redundant. There was a single essay that I liked in here, which is, what's it actually called? It's called Morning Routine Girls, and it's about teenage girls with YouTube channels who film their morning routine of waking up, having a shower in a bikini, because obviously they're filming themselves for broadcast. So they've got bikinis, so it's not naked flesh, and then they apply their makeup and stuff. And I really liked it and related to it because I have something similar in my novel that's just out called Stories We Tell Our Children, where here Ellmann's going that the bigger sort of aspirational wish that these teenage girls have is that they land a commercial contract of sponsorship by a cosmetic firm for basically pushing out one of their brand and stuff, which I equated in, or I didn't equate, but it's in my book, is how a boy band, they put out all these sort of putative sort of I love you, I want to be with you. They're doing it in a general way, but each individual girl in the audience is taking that message for herself, and their biggest wish is to wake up one morning with a personalised tweet from one of the members of the band. So I could absolutely relate to this. But again, the problem is here, I'm not sure what she's basing this on, is, she's obviously watch some of these videos, maybe because she has a daughter who likes it. I don't know exactly how, but there's no statistics. Are these girls getting sponsorship that actually is increasing sales of the cosmetics? How many people are watching these videos? I mean, that'd be a very easy statistic to insert into here. There's none of that stuff. So she writes, there's a confessional element to these before and after cosmetic transformations. These girls are admitting to their fascinated viewers that channeling Barbie takes work. Even if, you're like the prettiest girl in town already and just can't help it. To show that they're human, they often include a blooper reel at the end. And throughout the ordeal that is their lives, the girls are upbeat because unhappiness is like such a waste of time. They lead eventless, nourishmentless, friendless, freedomless and odourless lives, apart from all the fumes from the promotional sprays and scents and toners with which they hourly asphyxiate themselves. I get so many compliments on this perfume. Not that's why we should ever do things, but it is nice. They are spatially challenged cheerleaders with blusher brushes for pom-poms, purse pups as mascots, and the bedroom their field of dreams. Some of these home-based advertisers are under 16, incidentally making them child labourers. Exploited by cosmetic firms, they in turn exploit their hoodwinked viewers, flaunting their sponsorships and luring the unwary towards their deranged music videos as well, which they also want to sell. Vulnerable to thumbs downs from across the globe on account of their asses, fat, and eyebrows thick, they resolutely pally personas are perfect avatars of capitalism. Now, I agree with all of that, but how does she know that they never leave their houses, which she asserts? They are spatially challenged cheerleaders with blusher brushes for pom-poms, purse pups as mascots, and the bedroom their field of dreams. How does she know? How does she know that every single one of these morning girls doesn't have a social life? Because she sort of says they lead eventless, nourishmentless, friendless, freedomless, and odourless lives. Again, how do we know? So, I thought this was so poor. 2.5 stars, but as I say, the great news is it's made me go, because I was in her head after this, I thought, what I want to be in her head in a much more entertaining and more fulfilling way. So this is my current read, and I hope to read it through all the way. I'm over halfway now, so hopefully we'll read that to the end. And the other book that I'm reading is a second book of poetry. I ought to say that these two books of poetry I picked up yesterday because I actually went to a bookshop for the first time since lockdown, and what a pleasure that was. And these are the two books that I picked up. So this is Joe Shapcott of Mutability, part of the Faber and Faber 90th anniversary edition, where for each of those 9 decades they are publishing a collection of poetry. Shapcott's is 2010. I guess the penultimate decade of poetry and stuff. I've started this, but I'm only part way through. Another very thin volume, 54 pages for 10 quid. I mean, that's not great value, but I'm not going to judge the book on the basis of cost. I didn't have to buy it. BookTube, sorry, just not for the future. Just a quick question I meant to ask. So I've got this wedding on Sunday, and I have to get there by London Underground, and I almost never take a train journey without reading, because it's a good opportunity to read. And you know, this Joe Shutcott of Mutability, I could take and read, probably finish it on one of the journeys and have nothing to read on the way back. But you know, whatever. But my question for you is: can I reasonably turn up to a wedding with this stuck in the side pocket of my suit jacket, or is that sort of going a bit too far? I have to say that it's a very good close friend of mine who's actually the best man at my wedding. So this isn't me sort of being a distant relative. This is me, but you know, I'm not doing a speech or I'm not being the best man. So you know, that's not the issue. But can I reasonably turn up to a wedding in a suit with this half sticky out of its pocket? So I would invite down below in the comments your views on this, whether this is bad etiquette or whether hell no, you're a reader, go for it. Okay.